I feel like it's necessary that I start this conversation off reading this verse in the Bible, and it is Proverbs 16 and 20. And it says, "He who heeds the word wisely will find good, and whoever trusts in the Lord, happy is he." And what I've realized after reading the Bible for the last 370 days, if not more, is it's hard to be what you never see. It's hard to be what you never see. And the reason why I say that is because before or prior to building my relationship with God, prior to studying and meditating upon the word, I was in the world, doing what the world did. But it was easy to do what the world does because I was around it. I saw it. It became difficult to be a real follower of Christ when I didn't see anybody else being a real follower. It was difficult to pursue something that I didn't see anybody else pursuing. So I think even indirectly, I just began to follow the crowd. And it wasn't to say that I was so far off, but it's more to say that it's hard to be what you never see. And when I was looking at my life, it was hard for me to find people that I personally knew that did the things that I wanted to do, or that was in the pursuit of doing something that was outside of the norm. And the reason why I bring this up today for conversation is it may not be just your fault why it's not happening. It may not be just your fault why it's difficult for you to continue to pursue it. And you know it is. It may not simply just be your fault because it's hard to be what you never see. But I think even there, it opens the window for opportunity. The same way that you have to have faith in God is the same way you have to have faith in yourself. It's the same way that you have to have faith in the thing being able to manifest into reality, to become not just faith, but the substance of it, and that become real. And just as it was difficult for me to become somebody that I never saw, or to do the things that I never saw people doing, such is it's difficult to become the version of yourself that you can't even see yourself being. Such is it difficult to also finding the words to articulate this the way I'm feeling. But if I can just not be polished quickly here, it's difficult to do things where you never even saw yourself doing those things, even if you have the vision, because you don't actually have the faith. Like, it's hard for you to believe that this is for you. It's hard for you to believe that you can become this person if you keep thinking that that person isn't you. So let us now flip the coin. Right? I'm not saying that it's just immediately going to be easy, but what I'm saying is, if it's hard to be the person, if it's hard to be what you never see, if I flip the coin, then it's easy to be what I always see. What I'm saying here is open up look outside the window of opportunity. I think we've been so encapsulated in this room, using metaphor here, but just being encapsulated into this room of familiarity that nobody else does what you want to do, or nobody else is an entrepreneur in your life, nobody else is a this in your life, nobody else is a that in your life. Nobody's a college graduate. Nobody's a this. Nobody. There's nobody reading the Bible, studying the Bible. There's no Christians in your circle. Be the one. I mean, you already are. It just goes to show that you can be the change that you want to see. Be it. It just takes you. Right? But then it's also, when I say look out the window of opportunity, also realize that if it's difficult for you to see or to be anything that you had never seen, surround yourself around, put yourself in the opportunity, put yourself in the environment. Put yourself in the environment to be able to be around the people who are doing it. See, I love it. I've seen a couple of like creators, and they'll move to LA or they'll move to New York, and they'll be surrounded with other people who are doing what they're doing in the pursuit of something much larger, something bigger. And regardless if they find success or not, they have now put themselves in the place, in the discomfort, right? I was trying to avoid saying that word, but I think because it has such a negative connotation, but it's literally the perfect place to sow seed. Discomfort is the perfect place to sow your seed. So it's not just hard to be what you never see, but it's hard to ever go where you've never been. Get into the room. Gain the friends. Gain the company even. The company that you need to keep. Because yes, it may not be your fault that it's hard, right? It may not be your fault that it's hard to be what you never see, but it is your fault if you allow yourself to keep looking at the same view. It is your fault if you never get out of that environment and put yourself into the environment of which is going to produce the fruit. It is your fault if you stay stagnant. It is your fault if you stay idle. It is your fault if you stay here. Because God didn't bring you this far just for you to be here. He didn't bring you this far just to bring you this far. But he can't drag you along. You have to be willing. Because it says in Proverbs 16:9 that a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. You still gotta move. You still have to be willing to be to get in the discomfort, because that is the perfect place to sow seed. I was talking about it, I think, yesterday, right? Where you have to manually sometimes put yourself in the growth phase. The comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. Don't stay stagnant. I get it, it's difficult. Sure, nobody said it was gonna be easy. That still didn't prevent you from having the vision. That still didn't prevent you from having the goal. That still didn't prevent you to say, I will. So if difficulty doesn't stop you from starting, why should you allow it to stop you from finishing? Life gonna be hard. That's cool. The Lord says that in our weakness, that's where he is the strongest. So no longer rely on your strength to get you through it, but his. But in what is your responsibility? It's to place yourself in environments where you see it, so it's easy to be it. Place yourself around people where you see it, so it's easy to be it. There's a part in there's a verse in Proverbs. It's eluding my mind right now, but it just talks about a man that loves to be in his own isolation, in his own fortitude, in his own solitude, only wants to hear his own voice. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but a man who only wants to hear him, that only wants to be around himself, only cares to hear his own voice. Get yourself in other rooms. Get yourself around other people who are doing or have done what you want. Can I tell you a little bit? Like, I had this friend named Caleb, and he has some of you know that I'm starting my own faith-based brand, right? My own clothing line. And it's all about giving God the glory. But besides that fact, I have a friend named Caleb. I grew up with him, and now we're just reconnecting because we both, God is always in the details. But I reached out to him because he started his own brand maybe like a year or two earlier, before I even had the faith in myself to believe in the vision that God gave me for this. And I've been asking him questions, and he is helping me through this process. But for him, it's not difficult because he already did it. And as I'm realizing it, I'm just letting you know that you don't have to do this thing alone. That you shouldn't do it alone. And the Bible tells you that it's better for two than one. For when one gets tired, there's another one to help him up. Or when there's a battle, two is always better than one. So if anything, gain in community. If anything, gain in other surroundings, environments that are differ or are different than the one that you're in currently, where you don't feel, and I don't want to use the word motivated, but you don't see it. There's some environments where you just can't see it because God never wants you to plant the seed there. It wasn't meant for you to plant the seed there. I mean, think about it. God told Abram, before he made him Abraham, to leave his country, his home country, and everything that he knew, but on a promise that once he did, that Abraham would have descendants that was more than the stars, than you could count in the stars, and more than the sand, and more than the grains, and more than the grains of sand, right? Meaning God didn't want to plant, before Abraham could be Abraham, and while he was still Abram, God already called him to go somewhere else so that he could sow the seed there. And on the way, transformation happened. Abram on the way became Abraham. So can you in that regard. The journey, the process, you begin to change. You begin to get elevated on the way there. In the place of discomfort. Think about it. Abram had to leave the land of familiarity to go into the place of discomfort, and that's exactly where God wanted him to plant the seed. That would lead to the 12 sons, that would lead to 12 sons that would end up being the 12 tribes, where all the descendants will come from. God fulfills his promise, and his word never comes back to him void. But you see, the difficulty about it though, is that if Abram would have stayed there, he would have never been able to get the promise. He would have never been able to stand in it. He would have never been able to embrace it. He would have never been Abraham, because Abram wasn't the one who got the promise from God. It was Abraham. See, you may have gotten the vision as you may be in your Abram season, but God is trying to take you over to the obedience leads you to the places where only Abraham can enter. You may be in your Abram season, but where God is leading you, you have to be Abraham to enter. So what I'm saying here is, I get it. It's not your fault that you have been born into environments where it's hard to be what you can't see. I get it. It's not your fault that you've been born in families where it's hard to be what you never see. I get it. It's not your fault. But what is your fault is if you stay there. What is your fault is if you just surrender that this is it and I'm just supposed to be Abram, when God knows and God is calling you to be Abraham. I get it. I understand it because I was living in it. I was in an Abram season, and I thought Abram was who I was meant to be. Until 370 days ago, where I picked this book up and started reading it for myself. And God showed me that I am just Abram, but that too shall pass, because he has an Abraham calling for me. And if I'm just willing to be obedient, if I'm just willing to change and transform along the way, I'll be able to enter into places where only Abraham can go. I'll be able to redeem the promises that were meant for Abraham. If I'm just willing to let go of my Abram, and if I'm just willing to step into what God is calling me to, if I'm just willing to go to the places where it's easy for me to see it, if I'm just willing to gain the friendships, even if I just have to reach back out to old friends who got it together, who can help me along the journey. I get it. It's hard and it's not your fault. But what is your fault is if you stay in those places where it's hard for you to be what you never see. So change it. If you're still here, I appreciate you. I appreciate all of the comments and everything that's happening. I try to read them. I try to read or get to most of them. I try to also not look at everything. So I don't know. I know we're growing a little bit, but I haven't been paying that close attention to it because I'm just trying to express for the expression's sake and not for the external reward. But either way, I appreciate y'all. I really do. And for the ones who are showing up every single day, every conversation we're having, know that you are appreciated and it is seen. So y'all talk to me in the comments so we can continue to grow together. Also, I want to let y'all know that in the description of this is linked a community. It's a GTG community. It's a free community. It's an opportunity for you to get into places that you may have never got into before and to be surrounded with people who you may not likely be surrounded by. It's world, it's global, and it's full of other Christian believers who are trying to get out of this Abram phase of life and step into their Abraham. So if that sounds like something you want to join, it's free. Like I said, it's in the description. But if not, it's okay. I still love you, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.